right, we are going to continue with our big idea. Knowing what numbers mean helps me to compare them and to solve problems. And today we're going to continue using decimals, but we're going to relate them to the units of measure. So we're going to be talking about meters and centimeters and millimeters and things of that nature. All right, here are some relationships among the units you use to measure length. You can read the length of this hummingbird in several ways. So we can say it goes from 1 centimeter to 9 millimeters. So it is 9 centimeters. It is 9 centimeters long. And since we know that in one of these centimeters there are 10 millimeters, we could say that this bird is 90 millimeters long. And since in 1 centimeter there is 1/100th of a meter, then 9 centimeters is 9/100ths of a meter. So this bird is 9/100ths of a meter long. All right, so these are some of the things we know already. So in 1 millimeter, there is 1/10th of a centimeter, or there is in 1 centimeter, there is 10 millimeters. If that's the case, in 1 meter, there's 1,000 millimeters. We can also say that in 1 meter, there's 100 centimeters. And in 1 centimeter, there's 1/100th of a meter. And in 1 millimeter, there's 1,000th of a meter. Couple of the different ways that you can change units of measure. So if we have meters and we're wanting to put it into millimeters, we can use this prior knowledge to help us. That's one strategy, and I'll show you another strategy in a minute. So for example, if we wanted to change 2 meters to millimeters, we know that in 1 meter there are 1,000 millimeters, so we would have 2 groups of 1,000, which would make it 2,000 millimeters. If we wanted to change 12 millimeters to centimeters, if we know there's 10 millimeters in 1 centimeter, well, then it's 1/10th of that. So we would move our decimal place 1 back, and we would do the same thing with 12. We would move our decimal place 1 back, so it would be 1.2 centimeters. To change 23 meters to meters, we know there's 23 millimeters to meters. We know there's 1,000 millimeters, and that's equal to 1 meter. So 1 millimeter then is 1/1,000th of a meter, which would then mean 23 millimeters would be 23,000ths of a meter as well. And in this case, you're moving the decimal forward. You'd be moving the decimal forward, from the back of the 3, and it'd be going 1, 2, 3 jumps forward because there's 1,000 in there, so there's 3 zeros, so we need to move it 3 places forward for the 3 zeros. And that means that's where our decimal would be, which makes it right here, because we jumped 1, 2, 3. And then we, of course, need to fill this spot with that 0. Now, I'm not 100% sure about a specific name given to this strategy, but it's knowing the relationship between meters and centimeters and millimeters, I suppose. The other way is to use a metric conversion chart. So we know that our first unit of measure is kilometers. And next we would have hectometers, then we would have decameters, we would have our basic unit, which in this case is meters, then we would have decimeters, centimeters, and millimeters. And the nice thing about this is you would be jumping a certain number of places, either to the right or to the left, and that corresponds to your decimal. So again, if we had 23 millimeters and we were putting it into meters, we would have to jump from millimeters to meters 1, 2, 3 places, And that's again where we move our decimal 3 places. Now 23, or any number, if it doesn't already have the decimal in it, has its decimal at the end. So we would move it 1, 2, 3 places. Here's our new decimal. We get rid of that one. We have to fill these spots with zeros. So it becomes 0.023. Going the other direction, it also works. So if we had, I can't remember what the other one was, but let's say we had 2 centimeters and we wanted to make it into millimeters. We're jumping then only from centimeters to millimeters, and it's only one place, and it's going in this direction to the right. So again, 2, our decimal would be here. We're moving it 1 jump to the right. We have to fill this with a 0. So it then becomes, and this one is gone now, it becomes 20 millimeters. So it works in either direction, and it's kind of neat because whichever direction you're jumping is the direction, of course, that your decimal moves. So whichever strategy you prefer, doesn't matter to me. Use whichever strategy you find works best for you. All right, now you get to try some practice. So we're going to start with whole numbers first, remembering that the decimal is always at the end of the number. Then we'll move into decimal numbers. So with whole numbers right now, try these 3. Press pause and try these. All right, so let's try the first one. We're going from kilometers to meters. So that's 1, 2, 3 jumps to the right. If we have 5 and our decimal originally starts here, 1, 2, 3 jumps to the right becomes 5,000. Or you could say, well, I know that there is 1,000 kilometers in, or there's 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer, sorry, so 5 times 1,000 is 5,000. All right, we have 6 meters to centimeters. Again, meters is going to be here, 2 centimeters. That means it's 2 to the right. 6, we know our decimal's here to begin with. 2 to the right makes it 600. Or we could use what we know about centimeters. I know there's 100 centimeters in a meter. So if we have 6 meters, there's going to be 600 centimeters as well. Okay. Last one, 72 centimeters to millimeters. I'm going to switch colors here. That's 1 to the right. And again, we're going centimeters to millimeters. As I said, 1 jump. 1 jump over then. This is where our original decimal is. It moves to over here. Remember, this one is gone now. Add that 0. 720 millimeters. Also, we know there's 10 millimeters in 1 centimeter, so we know we're going to have to multiply by 10. 72 times 10 means we're adding a 0 to the end. Either strategy works perfectly well. All right, a couple more to practice with. 3 more with no decimals in them. This is not a decimal. Okay, it's not a decimal. It's just the comma because that was from a US question. So we'll start with those 3, and then we're going to move on to this question, which will have some decimal numbers in it. So let's start with these 3. Press pause and do those 3 now. All right, so let's take a look. We have our unit conversion chart here. And in case you want to have a cute little rhyme to help you remember the order, King Henry doesn't usually, because this is units, drink chocolate milk. And this is units because this also applies to liters, and it also applies to grams. So we would have kiloliters, hectoliters, decaliters, liters, deciliters, centiliters, and milliliters, and the same thing for grams. So it's kind of handy to know this because it applies to all of them. Again, that information, your background knowledge, that you know there's 100 centimeters in a meter. There would also be 100 centiliters in a liter. There would also be 100 centigrams in a gram. So that same knowledge transfers as well to the other units. All right, so if I have 100 centimeters and I want to put it into meters, Using my background knowledge, I know there's, in 1 meter, there's 100 centimeters. So we're going down to 1 meter there. Or if you were using the conversion chart to help you, we're going from centimeters now to meters. 1, 2 jumps in this direction, which would mean in the 100, here's our decimal, 1, 2 jumps in this direction, this is our new decimal, this one we get rid of, which would make it 1 meter. All right, let's look at the next one. We have 65 centimeters to millimeters, centimeters to millimeters, 65. Our decimals here, we're adding the 1 jump to the right, moving our decimal over, adding a 0 in there, 650 millimeters. And again, we know that there are 10 millimeters in each centimeter, so that makes sense as well. Last one, we have centimeters to meters, so that's 1, 2 jumps now to the left. So if we have 5,200, we know our decimal is there, we're going 2 jumps to the left, which would make it 52 meters. We also know, remember, there's 100 centimeters in 1 meter, so we have to divide by 100, which would give us 52 as well. Now, when we use numbers that have decimals in them, it really doesn't change a whole lot other than the decimal's already there, so we move it from its position. All right, so now you're going to press pause and try the next 4. 3 of them have decimals, numbers, so remember if the decimal's already there, you move the decimal from the spot that it's in and move it however many jumps, or change it based on your background knowledge of how many centimeters are in a meter and so on. So go ahead and press pause and try those now. All right, let's take a look. So we're going to try to record these into, millimeters and centimeters. So we're doing both. So we have our answers right now in meters. We're going to put them into millimeters and into centimeters. So 3 meters to centimeters. I'm going to go 1, 2 jumps to the right. If this is 3, I'm going to have my dot there. I go 2 jumps to the right, I fill it with zeros, becomes 300 centimeters. Oops, sorry, I did that in the wrong one. 300 centimeters. And then for millimeters, it's really just 1 more jump, so we can just add another 0 there. So 3,000 millimeters or 300 centimeters. And we know that there are 100 centimeters in a meter. We know there are 1,000 millimeters in a meter. So background knowledge would also have been able to help us figure those out. 0.5 meters into centimeters first, again, is going to be 2 jumps to the right. So I'm going to have 0.5. 2 jumps to the right is going to make it 50. So now I get rid of that 0 and that decimal. It's 50 centimeters. For millimeters, we add an extra jump, so it's going to become 2, 3 jumps, 2 zeros added on the end. Get rid of those. 500 millimeters. 0.4 meters. Again, we know for centimeters, it's 1, 2 jumps to the right. So 0.4, 1, 2 jumps to the right, fill it in with a 0. Get rid of that decimal because this is our new decimal, 40 centimeters. Same thing with millimeters, except it's 1 more jump to the right, which would make it 400 millimeters. .9 meters, much the same. Well, exactly the same actually. 0.9 from meters to centimeters is 2 jumps to the right. So 1, 2. Here's my new decimal. Get rid of that one. Fill this in with a 0. 90 centimeters. For millimeters, similar, except we're doing 3 jumps instead of 2. 1, 2, 3. Here's my new decimal. Get rid of that 0 and that decimal. 900 millimeters. All right, now I'd like you to try these ones. They're going the opposite direction, and they do all have decimal numbers in them. So changing these from centimeters or millimeters into meters. Go ahead and press pause and try that now. All right, let's take a look. We're going from centimeters to meters, so now it's going to be jumping centimeters to meters. So it's, watch the blue here, it's 1, 2 jumps, now to the left. So if we have our decimal here, we're jumping 1, 2 jumps to the left. Here's our new decimal. We have to fill these spots with zeros, so it would be 0.52 meters. And if we know that there are 100 centimeters in a meter and we're getting closer to the meter, our units are getting bigger, our number should get smaller, which it does. So that's kind of a check that you can use to see if you're on the right track. If our units are getting bigger, our number should get smaller. If our units are getting smaller, our number should get bigger. There should be an opposite change there. From millimeters to meters, you're now going to have 3 jumps to the left. 1, 2, 3 jumps to the left. So 1, 2, 3 jumps to the left. Fill these in with zeros. We need a 0 in front of the decimal. So 0.00483 meters. Same thing for the last one. 3 jumps to the left. 1, 2, 3. Getting quite a decimal number here. 0.0000569 meters. All right, that's our practice. Now you get to move on to your practice of the concept, your concept practice, page 192, 193, numbers 1, 3, 5, 8, and 10, converting units of measure with decimal numbers. So you can use whichever strategy you prefer. You can use the unit conversion chart. You can use the relationship between the units, that you know that there's 100 centimeters in a meter, and so on. I do want to see work. So I want to see the jumping, or I want to see 1 centimeter is equal to 10 millimeters, or whatever it is, background knowledge that you used about the relationship between those two units to help you figure out your answer. So make sure that there is work. Sometimes students think, well, I can't really show work for this, but actually you can. You can show your jumps, or you can show your understanding of the relationship. That will assist you. Remember, of course, along the way, if you have questions, to please ask myself, an EA, if there happens to be one in the room, a class member, or if you're at home, a parent. And of course, we know some of us forget our textbooks, so in order to provide you with an opportunity to be successful, here are your textbook pages as well. Here's questions 1 to 4. There's question 5, which wasn't visible. Questions 6 to 10. And 11 to 12, along with the reflect prompt. So there you are. In case you have forgotten your textbook, there are your pages and your questions.